All right, we got Matt Lauer, John Conyers, tax reform, Kate Steinle, and now Michael Flynn. What an explosive news cycle to end the week. Of course, dominating today's headlines, National Security Advisor Michael Flynn's guilty plea to lying to the FBI in the Russia probe. But do the facts actually merit the wild conclusions being tossed around, especially by one ABC reporter in particular? We're going to get to that. Also, we're going to shed light on another underreported story, whether Hillary Clinton got special treatment from the FBI in that email case, and how House Republicans are digging for the truth now. We'll speak with the congressman leading the charge to hold the FBI accountable, and it's about time. Plus, more on that Black Lives Matter plot of a Christmas boycott against white-owned businesses. That's a Merry Christmas. But first, the growing fallout over the Kate Steinle verdict and the shock and outrage over the acquittal of her killer on murder charges. It all boils down to this. Kate's killer should have never been in the country. Jose Inez Garcia Zarate, who was previously deported from the U.S. 5 times, was in a position to kill only because of a San Francisco insane sanctuary city status. And by the way, he's hardly alone. 22% of the federal inmate population in California are suspected illegal immigrants. 121 criminal aliens released by ICE between 2010 and 2014 were later charged with homicide. That's blood on their hands, my friends. And 2,139 DACA recipients have lost permits because of criminal or public safety concerns. Now, everybody wants to say the Dreamers represent the best of the young people in the country. You know, every Dreamer is a valedictorian or saves cats from trees. But is that true? Well, they've experienced the painful and personal consequences of loss and death due to our insane immigration policies. I'm talking about the victims of crimes, because they've experienced these personal consequences of loss and death and life and death lost. Don Rosenberg is joining us in Westlake Village, California. He lost his son, the 25-year-old Drew, when he was killed in 2010 by a Honduran who entered the country illegally but earned protected status. And joining us from Chicago, Brian McGann's brother, Dennis, was killed in 2010 by a drunk driving illegal immigrant. And in Phoenix, Steve Ronenbeck's son, 21 years old, Grant, was working overnight on a shift at a convenience store when he was basically executed by an illegal immigrant over a pack of cigarettes. Gentlemen, I wanted to talk to all of you since this Kate Steinle verdict came down. And I think, Steve, I want to go to you first because, as I understand it, your son's murderer is awaiting trial at this moment. Your reaction to the Kate Steinle acquittal yesterday?
You know, I was absolutely stunned. And after that, it was just heartbroken for the Steinle family. I know that I can speak for Don and Brian and all the other victims' families, that our hearts go out to the Steinle family. It's just a travesty. You know, this man gave several different stories as to what actually happened. He never gave an honest answer. They still don't know exactly how he got the gun, but then they acquit him of murder or even manslaughter. I don't know. I can't wrap my head around it.
Bob, I want to go to you. The loss, whether it's a drunk driving illegal immigrant, a hit and run illegal immigrant, involuntary manslaughter, although this creep didn't even get that in the Steinle case. He's getting off basically scot-free in a couple more months of time after time served. What does this tell you about DACA and all the concern now about the DACA recipients in the United States? You saw those figures. You know them well.
Well, I got to tell you.
Oh, yeah, let's go to Bob on that. Let's go to Bob on that.
Brian, you mean? You want
I'm
me
sorry.
or-
Let's go to Brian on that. Sorry, Brian.
Okay. Yeah. Well, it's outrageous, and it could have happened here in Chicago as well, because we were one of the leading sanctuary cities that became a model for the country. I met the Steinles a few years ago. They're wonderful people. My heart goes out to them. They've fought the good fight, as we all have. it's just a travesty of justice. So many of us can lay claim to the proverbial insult to injury, and it continues almost every day. There's hundreds of thousands of American family members every day that mourn the loss of their children and their siblings and their spouses. So with the Steinleys, our prayers are with them, and with San Francisco, God help you out there. I don't know what's going on. I went to that pier last summer with my wife just to try to get some sense of what it was like, and it was tragic indeed.
Don, let's go to you. Speaking of San Francisco, your son was in law school in San Francisco back in 2010. He's no longer here to enjoy a holiday season. Your reaction, and then what about, we've heard nothing from Nancy Pelosi, we've heard nothing from Hillary Clinton, nothing from prominent Democrats on this case, zero.
Well, I'll tell you, I wasn't actually shocked in the least bit. I expected this to happen. I live out here. I see what happens every day. So I wasn't shocked at the two acquittals on the murder charges. I was marginally surprised that he didn't get the involuntary manslaughter, particularly since that's what the defense was using as their claim, that it was an accident. But even with that, you know, it's San Francisco, and the jury, you know, it's O.J. Simpson jury. We're not gonna convict you no matter what. I will tell you though, you know, you mentioned Nancy Pelosi, and you can, you know, lay it on all the Democrats. It's inconceivable to me, and I find it reprehensible, that they're worried about DACA recipients. I mean, the worst thing that would happen to any of those guys would be they'd get deported. The worst thing that's happened to, you know, Steve and Brian, myself, and so many others is they've lost a loved one. So our position, and you know, there's an organization we started called AVIAC back in June, and we put out a position that DACA should not even be discussed until all the other illegal immigration issues are dealt with. So for them to talk about shutting down the government is just absolutely incredible.
Chuck Schumer. Chuck Schumer actually threatening to shut down the government because he cares more about handling and caring and the feeding of illegal immigrants than protecting the innocent lives of American citizens and legal immigrants in the United States. Because there are plenty of other prospective victims out there because of San Francisco's sanctuary city policies, California's state policies, Chicago's sanctuary city policies, and it goes on and on and on. And to all three of you, I will say this tonight. My heart breaks for you. Our viewers' hearts break for you. My radio listeners. Americans are infuriated by this. And the fact that politicians in both parties don't seal this border, build this wall, get this stuff done to protect us is an abomination. It has been for years, and now with this latest verdict, it's even worse.
Well, you know, Laura, we can't rely on the politicians out in California. They made the mess. So I'm actually announcing a little earlier than we had planned, but we're going to launch an initiative to not only repeal the sanctuary city or the sanctuary state bill that was just passed, but to also create law that requires law enforcement to cooperate with ICE and with federal officers. So if anybody wants to look, the site's not really completely done yet, but it FightSanctuaryState.com, and we can really use people's help.
FightSanctuaryState.com. I'll get it on Facebook and Twitter. Well, don't worry, we'll get it right. I do that too late at night, but we'll get it right on Facebook and Twitter. We got to get the word out. People have to take the power back from the politicians who will not listen. Steve, I want to go to you because when I think about you, you're not too far from Phoenix, correct? You're right near the. Okay. So you're not too far from the border. What do Arizonans, the average person on the street? I mean, I don't care if you're Hispanic, white, black. What does the average person on the street think of special treatment being given to people who break our laws and repeatedly come into our country, are deported, come back, commit crimes, and then get a slap on the wrist? Any sense from people in Arizona about this?
You know, a lot of my friends, people I work with, even people that I just meet that recognize me, you know, they're fed up. They're tired of it. It's you know, it's not just the murder of my son or the murder of Marianne Mendoza's son or Don's or Brian's. It's the drugs that are coming across. It's the
human trafficking, all of it.
And the ones that are coming across the border that are taking advantage of our social service systems.
Hospitals, having children here, having multiple children here. And, you know, we can't call them anchor babies. I'm sorry, but they're here. It's 9 months pregnant. They have their child, and then no one can ever deport them. Look, gentlemen, we're out of time. But I want to say to all of you, we're with you. The people of the country are with you. It's probably of little comfort to you now, given what's happened. But thank you so much for joining us. And we're going to be following every aspect of this case and others like it, sadly, as the days and weeks go on. The impeached Trump media, boy, they're going to tell you that the Flynn guilty plea is the most important story ever. We're going to tell you why they're perhaps, possibly, and I think probably wrong. Next on the Ingraham Angle. Back to the Ingraham Angle. Most in the media went into a feeding frenzy mode earlier today when former National Security Advisor Mike Flynn pled guilty to one count of lying to the FBI over his contacts with Russia's U.S. ambassador during the transition. But we already knew about that single lie. It's what cost Flynn his job after just a few days in the position back in February. So what's the White House reaction tonight? Joining us now with the latest is Fox News Chief Washington Correspondent James Rosen. James, what's going on?
Laura, good evening. Clearly, White House officials tonight are bracing for General Flynn, now actively cooperating with the special counsel to say all manner of things. And with that in mind, a lawyer for the president has already begun painting Flynn as an unreliable witness, noting that he only served 24 days as White House National Security Advisor and describing him as, quote, an Obama administration official. The false statements involved, said presidential attorney Ty Cobb in a statement, mirror the false statements to White House officials, which resulted in Flynn's resignation in February of this year. Nothing about the guilty plea or the charge implicates anyone other than Mr. Flynn. And Cobb added the conclusion of this phase of the special counsel's work demonstrates again that the special counsel is moving with all deliberate speed and clears the way for a prompt and reasonable conclusion. Flynn now admits he falsely told FBI agents in January that in his phone calls with the Russian ambassador the month before during the transition period, he never asked Sergei Kislyak to refrain from escalation in a diplomatic skirmish with the U.S. at that time. Flynn also falsely claimed not to remember a subsequent call in which Kislyak apprised him that the Russian Federation had indeed refrained from escalation as Flynn had requested. Flynn also admitted having falsely told agents he never asked the Russian ambassador on a separate occasion to vote against a pending UN Security Council resolution that was targeting Israeli settlements. And Flynn falsely told the agents that he never received from Kislyak any indication of Russia's response to that request. Finally, the special counsel got Flynn to admit that he made, quote, materially false statements and omissions on federal disclosure forms about his work as a lobbyist on behalf of Turkish interests. And those admissions, paradoxically, could work against the special prosecutors if they seek to place Flynn on the witness stand against more senior figures, like the president. Because as Ty Cobb's statement shows, any defense counsel will seek to impugn Flynn's credibility on the grounds that he's already admitted lying in the past to federal agents on federal forms. So how should jurors feel comfortable believing him when he's on the witness stand? Laura.
James, thanks so much. And today's Flynn news has the media, of course, going absolutely bonkers. And they're excited about the possibility that this could be curtains for President Trump.
There aren't many more dots after Mike Flynn, right? Your dots go to Kushner and then the president. There really are no other dots here.
This is a case that reaches directly into the heart of the Trump administration, into the Oval Office.
People now who have believed that the president's sort of loose way with information and facts was his best defense now think that the president is in danger and exposed.
I do agree. This is a big moment where if you're on the fence, you start to think, geez, is this whole thing going down? Is it Watergate?
No, to the contrary. Everything's Watergate. Nothing's Watergate when everything's Watergate. Here's how famed former federal prosecutor Andy McCarthy put it, his own perspective in National Review. He said, for all the furor, we have a small potatoes plea in Flynn's case, just as we did in Papadopoulos' case, despite extensive collusion evidence. And, of course, joining us now with reaction, former federal prosecutor Joe diGenova and Saul Weisenberg, who served as deputy independent counsel in the Whitewater investigation. of Bill Clinton. Okay, Joe, is the truth somewhere between this is worse than Watergate and this is small potatoes? Where are we on this?
Well, it's very important to realize that General Flynn did exactly what Papadopoulos did. He pleaded guilty to conduct that was legal. He lied about conduct that was legal
Explain
to do. All of Flynn's conversations with the ambassador to Russia were perfectly legal during the transition period and even before. It's not a crime to communicate with an ambassador of a foreign country about foreign policy when you are the foreign policy advisor to the incoming president. So I don't know why he lied. It's inconceivable to me. If he had told the truth, there would be no crime, other than the Farah stuff about his failing to register. But this is a foreign agent. This is a nothing burger. After all this time, this is what he gets out of Flynn. It tells me that there's not much there, and it certainly can't involve the president, because the president has the authority to do all the things that he did. And as far as Kushner goes, that if there's anything with Kushner, it involves transactions involving real estate deals 10, 15 years ago.
Saul, you felt it all day long, building. Jared Kushner directed, calls to Russia. First of all, even if that were true, if they were sitting around a table somewhere and Jared Kushner and a bunch of people said, well, we should probably reach out to Russia on this and find out what's going on with all the Security Council members on this Israeli sanctions thing, because none of us want Israel to have more sanctions put on them. Big deal. So what if he did? As DeGeneres said, there's nothing wrong with that. You could do that all day long when you're a transition team official.
Well, there's nothing wrong with, quote, communicating with the Russians. In fact, in most instances, there's nothing wrong with a private citizen communicating with the Russians. Now, if you believe what is in the factual basis or statement of the offense of the Flynn papers, they did violate the letter. Conceivably, there was a violation of the language of the Logan Act. And you're hearing a lot about the Logan Act. But as you know, the Logan Act has never been successfully used against anyone. And the last time anyone was even indicted under it was 1852. So if Mueller is thinking of indicting anybody under the Logan Act, to me, and I've been a defender of Mueller, I think he's an honorable guy. But if he is even thinking of prosecuting anybody for violating the Logan Act, I will instantly denounce him, because it will show such bad faith that it's unbelievable to me.
Well, I would agree with that, except here's the problem for Mr. Mueller. You can't violate the Logan Act when you're in the transition team.
Yeah, you're an authorized agent.
Because you're a government employee. You get a green check. When you're on the transition team, you are a special government employee. They can communicate with anybody they want. And I agree with Saul. The Logan Act's never been enforced. And if Mueller were to use it in this case, then if I were the president, I would fire him.
Yeah, now, Andy McCarthy, his point is that if there was some big scheme here, guys, they wouldn't have allowed him to plead to one count of lying to the FBI, which is a great point. I mean, if there was evidence of a scheme of collusion, they wouldn't have had to do the plea this way. And they would have gotten a lot more. So his view is that it's so far, at the very least so far, they don't really have anything on the collusion, conspiracy to influence the election front. They got Flynn, for whatever reason, he decides to lie about conversations that he could have done anyway. So that's the weird thing. Well, I gotta make you guys laugh on a Friday. Okay, this is gonna make you laugh.
I'm ready.
Joy, because I know Saul has a great sense of humor. He's very serious, but he has a great sense of humor. Joy Behar heard about the news of the Flynn plea reading an ABC report today on The View. Let's watch.
Welcome back to the show.
Breaking news.
Oh, my God. Oh, breaking news. ABC News' Brian Ross is reporting Michael Flynn promised full cooperation to the Mueller team and is prepared to testify that as a candidate, Donald Trump directed him to make contact with the Russians. Yeah!
There's actually just one as Publishers Clearinghouse there, guys. But ABC, by the way, had to come out immediately and say this was not during the campaign. This was actually during the transition. But this is the level of, there it is. The clarified. I don't have to read the whole thing.
It wouldn't.
Sorry,
Go
it
ahead,
wouldn't
Saul.
even matter if it was in the campaign. Sorry to
You could
interrupt.
do it during the
wouldn't matter if
campaign.
it was in the campaign. There's nothing wrong, quote, with talking to the Russians. All right, it depends on what you say. So, but the earlier point you made, Laura, is very important that Andy McCarthy made. This is very striking to me. The plea agreement says that Flynn is only protected from future prosecution based on items that are in the statement of the offense. That's the key document. There's nothing in the statement of the offense about collusion during the campaign. Nothing. So unless there is a completely separately sealed, completely standalone plea agreement for Flynn that is sealed, which would be almost unheard of, I think Joe will agree with me, it means that Flynn has no knowledge. Flynn, who was a key figure in the campaign, has no knowledge of any collusion with Russia during the campaign, any illegal collusion.
Yeah, you heard DeGeneva, nothing burger, but the well-respected Bob Mueller so far is coming up with very little, in my opinion. But the hyperbolic response by the media, I mean, these people are completely unhinged. The facts are irrelevant. Analysis, irrelevant. Just jump right to the gallows for Trump. That's where they're going. Gentlemen, thank you. And Saul, I knew I could make you laugh. I got it. I got it out of you. And thanks, guys. And we, by the way, wait. Sorry, this is a special alert. Tommy's telling me we actually have, stick around for this agenda, but we have some live footage of Special Counsel Robert Mueller leaving a D.C. Christmas party tonight. There it is. Oh, okay. He's lost some weight. Oh, yeah. He actually, he's, okay, well, looks, okay, there they go. Up next, President Trump wants to make Christmas great again. And on the other hand, there are those dreaming of a black-only commie Christmas. Details next. All right, ready for some humor? Black Lives Matters. That's the humor. No, sorry. Black Lives Matter thinks it can bring down white capitalism by creating a black Christmas. And their idea is for black consumers to boycott any white-owned stores. So tell me, how is that not racist? And don't people like Hillary Clinton and former President Obama ultimately share some blame for helping legitimize such a radical organization? Just listen.
Black Lives Matter simply refers to the notion that there's a specific vulnerability for African Americans that needs to be addressed.
When people say Black Lives Matter, that doesn't mean blue lives don't matter.
And we do have to stand up and say loudly and clearly, Black Lives Matter.
All right, joining us now for reaction is attorney Anthony Tall. All right, Anthony, you got to educate me on this one. I do not understand this at all. How do you determine, first of all, just as a factual matter, if a business, let's say, is owned by like an Indian guy in a partnership with a white woman, and then maybe has a black co-owner as well, maybe three people own a business together, does that business get boycotted because there's an element other than a black element in the ownership structure? How do you determine that?
Well, I don't know if that's how you focus on the problem. I think you pretty much just focus on what they're saying is that there's black businesses in the black community that need to be supported and need to be encouraged. You know, this is the day of Oprah. This is the day of Blackish. You know, black economic power means something. So what Black Lives Matter is saying is let's just invest in black businesses for this Christmas. Let's make sure we spend our dollar the way that a lot of other ethnic groups have spent their dollars for years. So I don't know if the focus is so much on whether or not there's a diversity or multicultural within the business or excluding whites. I think the focus is on let's make sure that our economic dollar is spent in our community and we build entrepreneurship, which is a Republican idea. I'm surprised you don't like that, Laura.
Yeah, well, I actually think it's people want to, Catholics go to Catholic businesses, you know, I don't have any problem with that. My problem is when it seems to be based in a very, it's kind of a negative thing. Christmas is about, you know, Christ and the birth of Christ and, of course, retail. But I think need consumers. They need customers. So why penalize a business that just happens to be owned in whole or part by a white person? Maybe that white person or Indian person or Asian person maybe pulled himself or herself up by the bootstraps, came from nothing. and started a business in a minority community. Don't we want to encourage white and Asian and all sorts of people to come into black communities to bring more dollars and investment? That way black people can come work there and maybe become a manager and ultimately take the shop over. Isn't that something good?
Well, yeah, that's good, but I think because black people in this country have had such an economic struggle. Remember, this is nothing new. Going all the way back to Black Wall Street in Tulsa, Rosewood, where blacks would try to start their own businesses, which could expand and could express the diversity that you're talking about, and a lot of those communities were destroyed. So with that being the case, we're still here in 2017, where now we realize the black dollar has economic power, as it always has.
Dollar?
And
when
maybe,
you say a black, hold on, I say green dollars. What do you mean black dollars? I mean,
I definitely understand. I definitely understand green dollars. I guess what I'm saying.
What I'm trying to say is a dollar spent at any store, retail outlet, I mean, that dollar goes into the business in the community. So I understand spend money in the community. I think that's great because it encourages more business, encourages more jobs and so forth. That's great. But it just seems antithetical to me to helping a community where people are coming in from all races and backgrounds, whether it's St. Louis or Detroit. Isn't it about welcoming people of all colors and backgrounds into different underprivileged, underserved areas and bringing all people together? Isn't that what Christmas is all about? Not like you're black, I'm white, you're Asian, let's all go to our own stores and go to our own separate places. To me, that's just wild after everything the country's been through.
Yeah, but I don't think that's the point. I know. I don't think that's the point, though. I think the point is that what they're saying, and let me go back to the black dollar thing. What I'm saying is that black people who have money, which is obviously green, that their dollars go into black businesses. There's nothing wrong with that. There's nothing wrong with saying that if you live in a certain community, let's support the businesses in the black community.
Well, that's different, but you're making it about race, and I think this is the stuff that's driving
I'm not making
so many
it about
people
race.
crazy.
I haven't made
Black Lives Matter is
I haven't
making
made
it
anything
about race. And when you say black people should shop only at black-owned stores, that is a racial, at a time where our country is supposed to be uniting, coming together, especially at the holiday season. And if it was going to be really focused on only black businesses, why just focus during Christmas? Make it all year long, forever. Only go to black-owned stores, only go to black-owned businesses. Do it a whole year long.
I think
let's really do it right.
I think it should be that way. I think it should be that way, but I think
we've
once again, I think you're missing the point.
It
yeah,
should
we
be
have.
that
I think
way.
you're missing
So
the point.
no
The point
white-owned stores
No, that's not what I'm saying. What I'm saying is there should be a diversity of dollars spent. But because of those people who are at a low economic level to build their dollar value up in other communities, they need to learn how to invest in their own business. I know you agree with that, Laura.
Everyone needs to learn to have a work ethic, save for a rainy day, and be open to people of different backgrounds and I just think the racial line is wild. I think it's like the opposite meaning of Christmas, at least to me, but that's my view.
I think that's how you see it. Yeah, I think you see it wrong.
I appreciate it. Thanks so much. And while Flynn's plea deal dominated the headlines, the FBI may have to investigate a new suspect in the Clinton email case. We're going to tell you why up next. The left is probably hoping the hubbub over the Mike Flynn guilty plea will drown out this story, but a group of congressmen is demanding that the FBI investigate alleged special treatment of Hillary Clinton during its investigation into her private email server. Congressman Matt Gaetz of Florida sent a letter to FBI Director Christopher Wray asking the Bureau to explain its decision to investigate Clinton with a, quote, small team. What does that mean? The congressman joins us now. Congressman Gaetz, you've been all over this. People are saying, oh, you just don't understand when they say special investigation and small team, that's just routine kind of lingo. So you're making a big deal over nothing.
Well, Laura, we now have smoking gun evidence that Hillary Clinton got special treatment, and it's important to provide context. We've got Loretta Lynch on the tarmac with Bill Clinton. We've got Loretta Lynch telling James Comey to call this a matter and not an investigation. Then we've got James Comey sucking this up to headquarters and keeping the investigators in the Washington, D.C. office away from the Clinton investigation. And then he drafts the exoneration statement before even conducting the interview. In 6 days, the FBI director Director Christopher Wray will be before the House Judiciary Committee, and we need answers because Hillary Clinton didn't deserve special treatment. She should have been treated like every American, and now we know she was not.
Do you think that when they say special treatment and the way they designated it, it was just, from what you can see with all the things you just laid out, it was just kind of soft pedaling it or shortcutting it, or we know the conclusion, let's just put some window dressing on it so it looks like it's official, but let's wrap this baby up as fast as possible. Is that what you're getting at?
Well, that's what the evidence suggests. And when you look at the recent documents released about the tarmac meeting between Loretta Lynch and Bill Clinton, the FBI was more worried about spin control and public relations and punishing the person that released this information than they were about the improper conduct of the Attorney General of the United States. And so time and again, we see from the Obama era that they were determining the outcomes before actually conducting the investigation. That's not what the American people deserve, and that's why we're going to fight for a real investigation.
Congressman, weren't they also desperate to find out who leaked the Clinton meeting on the tarmac with Loretta Lynch?
Absolutely. Recently discovered emails show that the FBI was very concerned about who let the American people know that Loretta Lynch was meeting with Bill Clinton, but they weren't at all concerned about the fact that the meeting had occurred and had jeopardized this very critical investigation. So we're really seeing a circumstance where the FBI, the Lynch Department of Justice, was engaged in a cover-up of their activities, all at the same time they were determining the outcome of the Hillary Clinton investigation before actually doing it.
All right, Congressman Gates, thanks for that update. Sarah Carter, let's go to you. It's good to see you again, of course, from Circa News. You've been all over this story. There's some concern that, well, what Gates is saying, well, it's not quite right because the word special, they designated a special investigation, can be used interchangeably in some cases with major investigation, because if it's a special inquiry, it's a major inquiry.
Correct.
So could that be what's kind of going on here?
Well, we don't really know until Christopher Wray talks. We don't really know whether that was designated from the Hoover term, special meaning major investigation. But what we do know is this. There were 110 confidential secret emails that were passed through 52 email chains. 8 of those emails were considered top secret. And if you just look at what Inspector General McCullough said in his interview recently with Catherine Herridge, she said, well, if anybody else would have done this, if you would have done this, where would you be? And he said Leavenworth. So a lot of FBI agents who were working at the time beating, on the ground, collecting information, not the top dogs, not Director Comey, not McCabe. They said that they felt that the rug had been pulled out from under them, that she was treated differently. And that I can tell you from interviews, extensive interviews that I've done.
From your sources. David, we've been talking about this for a long time. Are you at all convinced by what you heard from the congressman that designating this as a special investigation, the tarmac, you heard all the elements he laid out, that's significant in your mind at all?
So you got to kind of feel bad for Congressman Gates. He's trying to get attention for an FBI investigation that ended over a year ago on the same day that a major thing happened in the special counsel investigation, which is the former national security advisor pleaded guilty to crimes. That investigation is going forward, now finding evidence of crimes, finding indisputable evidence the national security advisor engaged in crimes. With Congressman Gates talking about something that's almost irrelevant now, going over the same old information that's been gone over many times. He has every right to make these inquiries, but they're not really going to go anywhere, and they're not germane to what's actually happening right now. But it's also very important to address this issue of special investigation. That's a term of art. If Congressman Gates talked to anyone in the FBI or the DOJ, they would have told them that's a term of art that's used to...
I made that point.
Yeah, you made that point. But it's used to describe an investigation of a very high-level person. It doesn't mean she got preferential treatment.
But it was odd. It was odd the way Comey decided to come out, right? With the first the announcement of the investigation, and then deciding, kind of writing the conclusion before they even had wrapped up the investigation. So I agree with you. Maybe the special designation is not such a big deal,
right?
But it's the other facts that make the thing just odd. And you're right, it did wrap up a year ago. It doesn't mean that things during that investigation, didn't happen that were kind of wacky. I mean, there was no notes taken during Hillary Clinton's questioning. that's just weird. Comey wasn't even there during her questioning. If it's a really major investigation of a major American political figure, don't you think Comey would have been there, present? Why wasn't he present? Never really heard a good answer to that. But you're right. Flynn did plead guilty to one count of lying to the FBI. There's no doubt about that.
But more importantly, he's now cooperating with the special counsel.
Yeah, he's cooperating
in an
on a
investigation
process crime.
That's probably going to lead to President Trump or Kushner or others.
Yeah, well, we shall see where it leads. But we talked about this in the previous segment. Let's talk about a possible entrapment. Speaking of this Flynn thing, they knew they were surveilling Ambassador Kislyak, the Russian ambassador. They were surveilling him, so they knew who he was talking to and what was being said, Sarah. And so why did they go to Mike Flynn? It's an interesting question. Why did the FBI decide to go to Mike Flynn and interview him about matters that they already had transcripts of? Isn't that interesting? I find that fascinating. You already had the transcripts. Well, you already knew what they talked about. So
that is fascinating, because you'd have to look at this as whether this was criminal or was this counterintelligence, because if they had a FISA on Kislyak, right, they would be watching Kislyak, trying to see.
They already knew what they talked about.
This is my question. How did they know to unmask all these specific numbers? And this is what a lot of people don't understand. I mean, when you're looking at these type of investigations, this is what you would have to know that number specifically. You'd have to have a reason to unmask it. So I'm tending to agree with you on this.
I mean, I just kind of thought about that tonight. It's just, you already know what he said. So why are you asking? Well, did you have any conversations? Well, we already have the transcripts of the conversations. And was it the Russian dossier that helped unmask certain individuals leading up to this? We don't know this yet, but it's definitely not a happy day for the Trump administration. It's clearly not. I'm not trying to underplay it, but I'm not trying to jump to these huge inflammatory conclusions either, because I don't think that's smart. Thank you both. It's always great to have you on. And straight ahead, will Congress drop a tax cut in our Christmas stocking? Will they all be Grinches? We'll take you live to Capitol Hill, where it's all happening. You may be getting a Christmas gift from Uncle Sam this year. Wouldn't that be nice? Well, the Senate is poised to pass a tax reform bill. That's what they're calling it. It's a do-or-die agenda item for the Trump administration. And for more on where we are now, Chad Pergram, Fox News senior Capitol Hill producer, joins us from Capitol Hill. Chad.
Good evening. They are a couple of hours away, Laura, from actually voting on this bill. What we're looking at right now in Senate language is called the vote-a-rama. This is a series of votes that sometimes takes hours. It's just roll call vote after roll call vote after roll call vote as they get closer to a final vote on this, probably 1 or 2 in the morning here on Capitol Hill. We are expecting this to pass. We believe they have 51 yeas on the Republican side of the aisle. Bob Corker, the Republican senator from Tennessee, appears to be the only no. And Vice President Pence is going to come to the Capitol here in the next couple of hours. His vote is not expected to break a tie. You know, the Vice President, in his capacity as President of the Senate, can only vote if there is a tie. I'm told that he just wants to come to preside over the Senate when they presumably pass this sometime after midnight, Laura.
Okay, Chad, thanks so much for that update. And when we come back, I attended the White House Christmas party today for the press, and we'll share a candid or two and answer Sean Hannity's Christmas card challenge when we return.